Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Well, we are well past the bank holiday weekend here in London. The school's going back and it's getting darker earlier in the evening. So what better time to settle down with a beverage of your choice? Or if you are more energetic, take us for a run on your bike or in your bag on your commute to work. We don't care. We're just thrilled you found us. Today's guest will complete 40 years in the London insurance market in September, and ahead of Martin Reith achieving that landmark achievement, Robin Merttens grabbed a virtual coffee with him to get his perspective on what he has learned in that time and advice for those who follow in his footsteps. Now, you're going to hear about what Martin considers his greatest achievements, why he took the role as chairman of Artificial Labs, and his passionate advocacy for algorithms. But if you're a regular listener, then you'll know it's not all sherry and roses on the Instep podcast. Robin and Martin also discussed some of the frustrations with the speed and progress towards modernisation in the London market. Well, quick ad break before I pass you over to Robin. If you haven't discovered us and you're interested in how we can help you meet your business partners, share your story and keep ahead of what is driving everything in the insurance world today, then I recommend you to our website, www.instec.co.
I've got Martin Reith with me today. Martin and I were on a panel together at a PPL, an artificial sponsored event last month. And we had such a good chat that, Martin, I immediately thought I'd get hold of you and I would get you on our podcast where you could be free of the constraints of being on the public stage. And you and I could have a little chat.
Robin, that's very kind. Thank you. I was certainly on my best behavior at our last event together. And of course, I shall be today. But I've been looking forward to having a chat with you.
You go back a long way. Tell us, what was your first job in the marketplace? What were you doing?
I started off as a bleached 19-year-old university leaver looking for a job that would create some wealth for me. And actually, the reason I went into this industry is not terribly exciting, I suppose, but I actually read an article in the Daily Mail when I was at university about a gentleman called Ian Goldfinger Posgate. And Ian Posgate was a very famous Lloyd's underwriter, and he was making a lot of money. And I thought, gosh, that sounds like fun. And so in those days, Robin, you may recall, you could go to a telephone box and there would be physical telephone directories. And I very naughtily ripped out 5 or 6 pages relating to underwriting agencies from the yellow pages. And I wrote 84 letters. And I got 6 job offers. And I started anyway as a photocopier and a data entry clerk for a syndicate called Brooks and Dooley, which later became the Brockbank Syndicate. And that was, and this is significant, it was 40 years ago this October. So on October the 1st, 1984, I started, and my 40th anniversary is months away.
That is a really good story. Other than the Daily Mail bit, if I may say, don't think its editorial values have changed very much. But didn't Posgate get into terrible trouble in the end?
He had his challenges, and indeed the company I joined, Brooks and Dooley, also had their challenges, most notably with a reinsurance company in Bermuda called Fidentia. But Mark Brockbank was the savior and the champion of that business, and really I joined him, and he was a legend in his own lifetime. He unfortunately died a few years ago, but an extraordinary man.
And has it given you a good career? Have you enjoyed it?
Do you know what? I've been incredibly lucky, and yes, I've had enormous fun, and I hope I can continue to have a bit more fun for a few more years yet. It's an incredible industry, and I marvel often, actually, how many people I know or am connected with, and I just love that. And of course, you can't be everybody's friend, and hopefully I'm majoritively liked in the market rather than disliked, but no, it's been a tremendous career for me, an amazing industry, and I'm very lucky to have played a small role in the cogs of Lloyd's.
Is there one thing you've done in that 40 years that you're most proud of? Is something that you would point out and go, I'd like that to be my legacy?
Yeah, for me, it has to be when I was lucky enough to start a company called Ascot Underwriting. And Ascot continues to be a major force in the marketplace, but for me, I started that company in 2000. I was introduced to Hank Greenberg by Steve McGill and Martin Sullivan, who was then running AIU, the international arm of AIG. And this was pre-WTC, by the way. I managed to persuade Mr. Greenberg that now was the right time to start a new Lloyd's syndicate and come into the Lloyd's marketplace. And AIG had very publicly shied away from backing any Lloyd syndicate up until that point. Lloyd's had just gone through reconstruction renewal in the mid-90s, had some tough years. And for me to have persuaded Mr. Greenberg to back me and my team and to come into Lloyd's, and Sachs Riley was chairman of Lloyd's in those days, was a huge endorsement of me and my team, but also of the Lloyd's marketplace. And I know Sachs Riley was thrilled that in those days AIG was a AAA rated gorilla of financial services and was an extraordinary capital provider for us to have secured. So I think that's got to be my greatest achievement and one that I'm most proud of. It always slightly tempered. Everybody has their Mr. Greenberg stories. And I was, as you can imagine, terribly nervous when I was introduced to Mr. Greenberg. And it was over a lunch on the 67th floor of AIG building in Pine Street. And at the end of the lunch, I was sent down to the 18th floor for Hank and his colleagues to deliberate. And then I was summoned back up. And he very sweetly slapped me on the back and he said, "Peter, we're going to back you." At which point I thought, Peter's fine.
Yeah. But I know from our chat on the stage that you're a progressive at heart. So it's a good market, but it's not a perfect market. Anything about the market now that you don't feel is right, that needs to be fixed?
I think there's a number of things that Lloyd's has done well and continues to need to do better. Let's be clear, it's been through tremendous change in the last 5 or 6 years. And the healthy place that we find ourselves today in the market has largely been driven actually by the regulator saying to the market participants that enough is enough. And whilst it was a fairly rude awakening and quite a shock to many, it was probably exactly what was needed. And we went through, as you may recall, a thing called Decile 10 and the business planning process. And that was after a spate of poor results for the market, underpriced risks, etc. And the market needed to change. At the end of the day, we provide a service. And if we don't make a profit, we're unable to provide that service to our customers. So it clearly makes sense that we have to be healthy and strong and delivering reasonable returns to our shareholders to provide that sort of service. And the market is in tremendously good shape today. It is the most disciplined and strong market I have seen in my career over the last 40 years. And I've seen a few ups and downs. Clearly, there's more that it can do. And I think the C-suite in Lloyd's has been quite progressive in terms of adoption of new techniques and the move, of course, to digitalization and machine learning. These are all very important steps that we need to embrace. So I would say, Robin, I'd like to see a stronger pace in certain areas of the marketplace, but it's a marketplace, and therefore it's not always as easy to simply rule with an iron fist.
I had a sort of digital or internet-driven vision for how the market would work 25 years ago. So for me, it hasn't happened fast enough. It seems to me that Lloyd's gets a lot of the blame for that. And I wonder how fair that is, in the sense that everyone sort of blames it on the centre. Is there some blame that should be attached to the individual managing agent syndicates? Shouldn't people take responsibility for driving their own affairs along? Or do you feel that everyone has to act in sort of concert, in some kind of consensus to make the market work?
No, I think each managing agency has their own responsibility to keep a pace with developments and be pioneering as much as it can. It has to do so, though, within the environment that is Lloyd's, and we all work on a mutualized platform from which syndicates receive a lot of benefit, licensing, credit rating, access. So there's lots of good reasons for Lloyd's to exist in a mutualized way that it is. I think where it stumbles, though, and we've seen this recently with the long-awaited Blueprint 1 and then Blueprint 2, where it's trying to move the market in a particular direction, and a direction that I completely support, by the way. But the seemingly endless delays to its actual launch is really not helping. And so in some respects, it's actually forcing almost a two-tier market where those more progressive agencies are actually building their own digitalization platform and gateways to enable them to maximize the opportunities there. And the sort of malaise around Blueprint 2, the turgidity, if that's even a word, is holding back the majority of the market, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of sheep in that marketplace, and they're looking for solutions to be delivered unto them. Part of the issue we have is that, given my comments a few moments ago about the robustness of this market, I generally think there's a complete lack of urgency amongst many managing agencies to seize new initiatives to help them with the more challenging time. Because candidly, in this market, you can make money seemingly standing on your head in a corner. It's not difficult to make a good return in this marketplace. But let's not use that as an excuse to delay looking at implementation of new and progressive ideas to build businesses.
It's so funny, and I've told this story so many times. I'm sorry for those people who are regular listeners, but I remember back in the days of RI3K when there was also a very buoyant marketplace, and you go around saying, shouldn't you be more digital and couldn't you be more efficient? And imagine being able to sit anywhere in the world and trade digitally, and everyone would say, what do you know about it? How much money are you making? Aren't you all losing lots of money? We're making huge amounts of money. Why don't you go back into your box? And then, of course, when they really needed to be more efficient and they were losing lots of money, you'd come around and say, but surely now's the right time to adopt this sort of technology where you could get much more from your underwriters than you do. And everyone would turn around and say, how on earth do you expect me to invest? And now, didn't you see last year I lost hundreds of millions of pounds? Where's this investment money coming from? There simply never is a good time to invest in technology if your mindset is to find a reason not to.
And I quite agree. And that's exactly the issue. And people need to understand the advantages and benefits that technology can bring to a business. It doesn't need to hamper, restrain, or lead to significant redundancy in a business. It's a way of evolving and should absolutely be on everybody's radar today. You look at the way you can augment the underwriting process with data streams. There's so much you can do now to enhance your underwriting decision and awareness, and yet still so many people fail to do so. It's baffling.
That's a really good time to change tack and start talking about tech and your involvement in tech, because you're the chairman of Artificial, and given your near 40 years experience in the market and known as a progressive and a man who could make stuff happen, I'm sure you had quite a few opportunities. What was it about Artificial that made you think, actually, I really want to be part of that?
I was thrilled when they approached me. I've always viewed myself as being a bit of a tech geek, so this was a chance for me to expand into that arena. I find it fascinating as a topic. I absolutely see it's an essential evolution for the industry. And with Artificial Labs, quite simply, it's their technology, their position in the market and their continued position in the market, their people, and the trajectory that I felt that they were on. There's a lot of people that claim to walk the walk and talk the talk. I absolutely know that Artificial do that, and I have been terribly impressed with their technology and the way that it's being adopted in the marketplace.
It does seem to me, in a world where you're making use of artificial intelligence, what you've got to do is find a proposition that gets the balance between what the users will let bots do and what they won't let bots do. In other words, I think the moment you start to talk too much about, I do this algorithmically, then you start to get that sort of cultural resistance coming in. Whereas I think Artificial have pitched it perfectly in, we're going to make you more efficient. We're going to show you algorithmically what the difference between your appetite is and what this risk is, so that you can make a quicker underwriting decision. I think that's spot on where the market's perception of where they'll let technology play. Because we speak to a lot of people, this whole issue of using algorithms to make underwriters more efficient is a big topic. And then what's followed quickly on the back of that is smart follow. People seem to use smart follow in lots of different ways, but ultimately nearly everybody is doing something. Is that a good idea? Because it seems to me there's the herding instinct has kicked in and everybody wants to do these sort of things, and they're doing it in a hard market where, to your point, it's quite difficult not to make money. Have you got a view on all that?
I think smart follow is a term that's often misunderstood in my mind. Let's be clear. Smart follow is not simply employing less people to have a lower expense ratio. And whilst that may be a start to impacting the combined ratio, it's a bit of a false start in my view. So I think smart follow, provided it has augmented underwriting flowing into it, has a position in this marketplace. And you'll be aware, as our listeners will be aware, that there are a number of syndicates out there that deploy that. And it's worked. And it's worked possibly, arguably, better than expected because of the market that we're in today. I worry sometimes that in scenarios where the smart follow is effectively a syndicate offering consortiums to a leader and paying an appropriate fee to access that, I worry how sustainable that is over time. At the moment, I think the consortium players can afford to pay the leader an appropriate fee, but as sure as eggs is eggs and loss ratios will decline, I worry that's going to be more challenging. We then have those that write what are called broker facilities, smart follow facilities, the largest of which, of course, is the Aon Client Treaty. And again, they have their place in the marketplace, no doubt about it. And they have been much maligned to begin with, and then much craved as the years went by. And today, I think, largely down to the sophistication that brokers have employed in terms of data analytics on those facilities, they have stood the test of time. But let's be clear, I think the days of blind follow in the London market are coming to an end, particularly as the market becomes more challenging. If you sit back in the cool light of day and think about it, the notion that somebody would just follow blindly what somebody else does doesn't sit very comfortably. And as the market becomes more challenging, you would at least expect underwriters to have or be able to inform their underwriting decisions and have some sort of discretion over the risks that they are willing to take.
That takes us neatly into the world of algorithms. Tell me your view on that. Where will it play? How far will it go? What's the opportunity?
The opportunity for employing algorithms to help in the underwriting process is profound. It's as simple as that. There's clearly a genuine reluctance around adoption of algorithms in the marketplace. I think that's born from two issues. One is the fact that a machine is making the decisions, and two is the fact that turkeys don't like to vote for Christmas, and therefore underwriters are very scared to embed them or employ them within their decision-making process. Neither of those, to my mind, really stand the test of time. And I'm disappointed, actually, at the reluctance, unwillingness to embrace algorithms into this marketplace. Of course, proof of concept is important. Of course, we need to demonstrate that employing an algorithm will produce at least as good a result than not employing one, arguably a better result, because you should be able to have a lower expense ratio and you should be able to have the ability to pick better loss ratio business because you're seeing more risks and triaging them quicker. So with all that said, it's slightly astonishing to me that we seem to be languishing in this world of no urgency to embrace algorithms. Now, of course, there is one famous example, which is BritKey, which has grabbed all of the headlines, has seen extraordinary growth in the marketplace, and has done incredibly well. And I'd be the first to admit it. It can be done better, in my view. I think the points of codification within the risk selection can be done better. And actually, more worryingly, BritKey have in effect created their own marketplace now. You access Travelers, Aspen, and part of Beazley through BritKey, which is a significantly bold move by Key.
We do a lot of lunch and learn type things. We go into members and talk about the themes of the day. And one of the things that has happened over the last 2 or 3 years was the astonishing negativity about Key and Brit and what they were doing. And people would say, what was our view and what do we think? And because they were groundbreaking in their use of algorithms, we were unbelievably supportive and have done everything we can from a kind of thought leadership point of view to support. And we always said that publicly. It says so much about the market that people were desperate for it to fail. And what you've just said is absolutely fine. But isn't it a natural result of the fact that really only they have been brave enough to spend a lot of money, really back themselves, create a whole new syndicate to do it? The lack of other people prepared to spend those levels of investments and get to understand their portfolio and understand how you codify risk, how you build algorithms, that leaves them with the opportunity to build out this platform, doesn't it?
Look, I think everything you said is entirely valid and fair, and kudos to them for seeing the opportunity and building it out. But I don't think the playing field is level. They saw the opportunity and they implemented and they spent money and they embedded technology and they did it. But let's not forget the support and sponsorship centrally within Lloyd's to see this syndicate grow. It became the poster child. Its growth has been significantly larger than I ever anticipated. And yet today, we have others trying to come to the market with a similar proposition, arguably with greater points of codification and calibration in order to make informed underwriting decisions. And it's a totally different ballgame. And all I would say is that whilst you're absolutely right to point out the advantages and the risk capital that Key took, it's not a level playing field today. And it's almost as though we will always be playing catch up with Brit Key because I think they're about $1.5 billion in terms of premium at the moment. But to get to that sort of scale today is very, very difficult to do.
No, look, I think it's fair because we have worked with quite a few who are trying to enter the space where the regulator's view has not been kind. But all that creates an opportunity, presumably. Where do you see now as the sort of big opportunities, given where the marketplace is and the observations you made about the underutilization of algorithms? Where would you be pointing your guns if you were looking for the next big opportunity?
So for me, it has to be in that space, Robin. Lloyd has very clearly gone out and said that it intends to grow as a marketplace. Let's say it's north of 60 billion at the moment in terms of premium. I think John Neal has a stated ambition to get to 100 billion. That's tremendous. And Lloyd's is a strong marketplace. So how's it going to do it? And what does it need to do to get to that stage? And clearly an angle on that is the lead follow space and how the market grapples with that. You may recall when we did the PPL artificial panel, I stated who knew it was okay to be a follower. And it is okay to be a follower. When I was growing up in the market, everybody underwriting were prima donnas and nobody wanted to be the follower. Everybody wanted to set the terms. But actually today, it's okay to be a follower in this market and to create a niche for yourself. But let's not forget that Lloyd's is a subscription marketplace and every participant in that marketplace has to add some value. The opportunity to roll out a machine learning, algorithmically informed underwriting entity and to sit behind, let's be honest, those prima donnas, those market alphas that have demonstrated over years their ability to attract business and where Follow Syndicate can support that leadership through capacity. The next step has to be to do that using algorithms to inform underwriters and to help best select and review a greater number of risks on that basis. And I really believe that's a significant step forward that we need to embrace as a marketplace.
Isn't it almost easier to do that with something new where you surround yourself with people who believe the same things rather than the difficulty of trying to persuade existing managing agencies with legacy tech and a resistant workforce to try and go on that journey?
Possibly. The market has remained disciplined and robust because there's been very few new entrants coming into the marketplace. And actually, I think there's enough talent and capacity and opportunity within the existing players, provided there's a recognition that for part of their capacities, it will be on a follow basis and it will be done in a smarter way. We're acutely aware that as we go around the marketplace, whether we're talking to distribution or we're talking to carriers, everybody talks about lead follow. Everybody recognizes there needs to be a solution to how they can more efficiently and effectively take follow line or place follow line risks in this marketplace. Everybody accepts that. Most people say, but I don't need to worry about it now because I'm seeing what I want to see and I'm making enough money. Others say, oh God, that means I'm going to have to embed a whole team to roll my sleeves up and get this stuck in and embed it within my businesses. It just meets with resistance. And so I think partly what we need to try and do as a marketplace is create some sort of platform that takes that pain away from distribution and carriers and say, look, you give me flow, I'll give you capacity, and let's put something in the middle where as long as somebody can articulate a risk appetite, I can calibrate it. in effect, Robin, just pour your risks into a hopper and it'll machine learn its way through.
Algorithmic follow as a service, effectively. Is that something like that?
Absolutely.
It's a really nice idea. Look, listening to people like you raises a question from my mind. The combination of you with your ideas, your knowledge, experience, network, allied to companies like Artificial Building, Smart, Relevant Technology. Why can't we get more people like you involved? Michael Watson is being very helpful at InsureX, but it would be great to have a kind of ecosystem of grandees with real knowledge of how the market works that could have these more tie-ups with smart tech providers.
I completely agree. It's so important that knowledge and talent and experience is retained in this marketplace and put to good use in developing new technologies and new ideas. It's quite clear from my perspective at Artificial, whilst the team at Artificial had done incredibly well, where they were struggling was getting an audience with the decision makers in brokers and underwriters. And I suspect Michael Watson at InsureX finds the same. He and I can generally initiate a conversation with a C-suite in an underwriting business or a broking house, because fundamentally, these are strategic decisions that are being made here. And it needs buy-in by the C-suite of the respective businesses. And so if Michael and I, whilst we may pretend that our technology skills are really the attraction for InsureX and Artificial, I suspect it's our network and our experience enabling us to position those businesses better. But that's good. And if we can help open doors, I'm sure Michael Watson would agree. That's all for the good.
Martin, I've made a whole career pretending I know a lot about tech and positioning myself as it is. I'm a past master. Look, you don't sound like a man about to sort of retire after 40 years of loyal service to the insurance market. Anything you're working on that you're prepared to talk about in the public environment?
Well, thank you. It's funny. I've been lucky enough in my 40 years to be able to step back a couple of times, which I've loved. And it was at my 50th birthday party where my son spoke and described how I was slowly turning the home into an office with telephone extensions. I hadn't quite introduced an appraisal system, but he feared that was next on the list. Clearly, I'm not quite ready to hang up my clogs just yet. So I'm loving my role at Artificial. I'm learning an awful lot and very keen to see that they prevail. I'm enjoying a role that I have at a new company, which is called Solasta Innovation Capital. And they raise capital to deploy at syndicates within the Lloyd's marketplace. So it's about building a curated and volatility managed portfolio of some of the best syndicates in Lloyd's. And clearly, I'm interested often to know whether those syndicates are embracing technology. So there's a bit of cross-pollination. But otherwise, I'm keenly interested and involved with a number of other opportunities. I think I may have one last go in me. I can almost hear your audience groaning at that notion, but I may do. Let's just see. But I'm enjoying what I'm doing for the minute.
So to finish off, any particular piece of advice that you would give to anyone young and inspiring who is thinking about entering into this market or is about to enter this market and following in our footsteps?
Yes, I think the first thing I would say is that this is an amazing marketplace, and it's amazing because of the people and the businesses within it. So that should never be forgotten. I would say that what I have learned is the need to engage, the need to be adaptable, the need to be curious, and just to work hard, actually. When I started my career, I was in the office at 6 and I left at 10, and I would do work outside of my job description just to impress my boss, frankly. And I learned an awful lot by being engaged. I'm a great believer, this may be controversial, in being in the office. I appreciate WFH has its own place today, but I would encourage those, if you can go to the office, do go to the office. Otherwise, Robin, I would say always be kind and courteous to people you meet on the way up, because you'll never know where you might find them later in life. And this market works on people. It's one of the most wonderful things about this industry. Relationships still count. So always be kind and courteous and respectful.
What a marvellous piece of advice. A quality piece of wisdom. Thank you. I think it's also a very good way to end. One other little bit of advice I give to you: please don't stop being a little bit controversial. And I'm quite appalled that you turned up at one of our events and felt that you needed to behave. I'll see to it immediately that kind of attitude stops. Martin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're all looking out to see what that next gig of yours is.
Thanks very much indeed. Been lovely chatting.
Well, one of the joys of hosting this podcast is a chance to talk to those who really know what is going on. Buyers, users, and managers of the technology that surrounds us, both new and old. And often these people themselves are the drivers for the change, and Martin's certainly no exception to that. Well, if you enjoyed what you're hearing, or maybe you've got some comments about what we could do better, please do tell us what you think. You can either find us on email, hello@instech.co, or you can capture Robin and I on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in seeing if we can do some great things together, well, track us down as well. But that's it. We're done.